Hello, everyone. So this is a continuation of the relationship and the marriage series. This is the part 2 of the video where I'm going to analyze a couple of charts. I'm going to analyze Mukesh Ambani's charts and I'm going to analyze Barack Obama's charts. It was a little difficult for me to get the time of birth of long-term relationships of celebrities because, as you know, in today's world, to find a long-term relationship and marriage without controversies is a bit rare. But everyone talks about Mukesh Ambani's money and his financial success. But I am going to specially talk about his long-term relationship and marriage and how it proved so beneficial for him. And what are those things in his charts that we looked at to establish the success of a long-term marriage. And same with Barack Obama as well. All right. So stay tuned. You can jump to the timestamps if you don't want to listen to the initial bit. But I always like to explain the logic before I start analyzing the charts. I have analyzed quite a few charts. So if you can check the time cards, I have analyzed Dhoni's, Elon Musk's, Virat Kohli's, and Narendra Modi, Donald Trump. I have analyzed all their charts, so you can check the time cards and get if you are interested in any of those, because those are to do with wealth, politics, and power. This video is to do with long-lasting relationships and marriage. Okay, so before we start, I will quickly talk about the 4 techniques. I have made the part 1 of the video, so I'm going to add the time card here. Pay attention to that because I have explained the 4 techniques that I am going to follow in detail. These are very basic techniques to check the strength of your 7th house and your spouse and long-term relationships and marriage in your chart. So it's about a 20-minute video, so pay attention. I'm going to quickly brief the techniques. So how I look at it in a chart is I first look at the strength of the moon, Venus, and Jupiter. Moon, the significator of the mind, the stability of the mind, because for a long-term stable relationship, you need a stable moon and a stable mind. And moon is also the significator of your emotion and your 4th house and whatever makes you happy, comfort and good feeling. Happiness at home is the significator. All right, because it is the lordship of Cancer. So for that, we need to check the position of the moon and see how moon is. If moon is in a good house and if moon is in a good sign, if moon is afflicted, usually it causes emotional ups and downs. Venus is the significator of how you relate to people, is the lord of Libra and the 7th house. So Venus is very important because how we relate to people is directly proportional to how the placement of Venus is and how strong Venus is. And then Jupiter is principles, right? Because in today's world of Rahu and Kali Yuga, there are people who are not following principles, and that could be the reason for relationships and marriages not lasting for too long. Jupiter is also the significator of the husband in a woman's chart. So we will look at the strength and position of Jupiter. That's the first thing that we will do in a chart. We will check that in our D1. We will check that in our D9. Okay. Next thing, the next technique I have explained. So please look at my the part 1 of the video. I have explained that in detail. We will look at the Tithi, which Tithi you're born in, and we'll look at the Tithi Lord. It's very easy to find out. You can install any app, or you can go online and look at, there are lots of softwares that'll calculate which day of the moon. So if you're born on Ashtami, which is 8th day of the moon, your Tithi Lord will be Rahu. If you're born on the 9th day of the moon, which is Navami, doesn't matter if it's Krishna Paksha or Shukla Paksha, your Tithi Lord will be Sun. If you're born on Shashti, it's going to be Moon. If you're born on Ekadashi, 11th day of the moon, it's going to be Mars. If you're born in Panchami, the 5th day of the moon, it's going to be Jupiter. All right. If you're born if you're born in Shashti, it's going to be Moon. All right, not Venus. If you're born in Dashami, which is the 10th day of the moon, it's going to be Moon again. All right. So let's look at the next technique. So we will look at the position of the Tithi Lord. And if the Tithi Lord is strong in the chart, usually in most cases, there are chances of a very long term and happy marriage and relationship. Okay, even if the seventh lord and the seventh house is afflicted, I have seen in many chart, if the Tithi lord is very strong in the chart, in the D1 and in the D9, people usually are blessed with a long-term committed relationship and a good spouse and a supporting spouse and a good partner. Okay. Then we will look at the third technique, which is the most commonly used technique. We'll look at the seventh house. How seventh house is the seventh house afflicted? Where is the seventh lord? And we will try to look at the strength and understand the strength of the seventh lord. Okay. So in today's video, we will pay attention to the seventh lord in the sixth house, because a lot of people think that if the seventh lord in the sixth house being the house of diseases and court cases and anything legal, that their marriage will end up in divorce. But it can happen. It can happen. There are cases where I've seen alimony cases with the seventh lord in the sixth house. But in Mukesh Ambani's chart, we will see how the seventh lord in the sixth house is giving him positive results. Okay. And what are certain things Mukesh Ambani has done and Nita Ambani has done so that they get the positive results of this particular placement. Okay. And then we will look at the technique number 4. So this technique is about looking at the D9, how to read the D9 chart. It's very, very simple. We will look at the placement of planets, any planets that are placed in the same sign in your D1 and your D9. Those planets become very, very powerful and usually give very positive and benefic results. They are called Vargottama planets, which means if you have Jupiter in Capricorn debilitated and you just still have Jupiter in Capricorn in your D9, it will most probably give you positive results. Okay, that's called Vargottam. Then we will look at degrees. We will look at the position of Atmakaraka, Amatyakaraka, and obviously Dharakaraka, the lowest degree planet as per Gemini astrology. We will look at the Lagna Lord of D9 and see if the Lagna Lord is well placed. And we will follow the same technique. We'll look at Venus, because Venus is the Lord of D9. We will look at the seventh house of the D9 and see how it is. We will look at the ninth Lord of D9 and see how strong it is. We will look at the Tithi Lord. We will look at all of these things, right? So we will analyze these things in the next couple of charts. So get your charts out. If you're a Scorpio ascendant, it's good because Mukesh Ambani is a Scorpio ascendant. And if you're a Capricorn ascendant, Barack Obama is a Capricorn ascendant. So let's look at the chart of Mukesh Ambani. All right. So we are looking at Mukesh Ambani's chart. We see Scorpio ascendant. Saturn in Scorpio. Interesting, right? Reliance Industries. What is Reliance Industry? What is their main business? Oil and gas. Scorpio under the earth. Saturn is also black. Saturn signifies career and business and oil and gas. So oil and gas, Saturn in Scorpio. There you go. He's doing business of oil and gas. Saturn in Scorpio in the first house. Okay. But we will pay attention to the relationship bit and not his career and his Lagna. We will see the Lagna Lord going to the seventh house. Mars is going to the seventh house. And it's in the sign of Venus. So now you will see, oh, Mars is in the seventh house. That's not a very good placement. Lagna Lord is there, but Mars is known to be a very aggressive planet, and it's not good to have that in the seventh house, and also can cause some people call manglik and some kind of dosha. But you see, the Lord of the seventh house is going to the sixth house. So we will analyze all of this. So thus the basic glance at the chart, this is what we see, but we will follow the step-by-step procedure. We will look at, number one, we will look at the position of Moon. You see, Moon is in Sagittarius. Second house, Moon loves being in the second house. Sagittarius. Lord of Sagittarius, Jupiter from the 10th house in Kendra is giving its fifth aspect, gives a very strong Moon. The Moon is strong. Let's look at Venus. Okay, we go step by step. Venus and Mars are exchanging positions. Now, if you see 7th Lord in the 6th house, 6th Lord in the 7th house, right? Parivartan Yoga from the 6th house and 7th house. We will discuss this in detail. And also the sixth house is exalted. It's sitting with Sun, but Sun is exalted in Aries. Lord of Aries, Mars is in the seventh house. Mars and Venus exchanging. So the sixth house where Venus is becomes extremely strong. Venus is also sitting with Mercury. Becomes very, very powerful. Mercury causing a Viparit Raj Yoga, and the incoming gains of the 11th house and the 8th house is sitting conjunct with Venus there. Very interesting. The Lord of the 7th house, right? Now we will look at Jupiter. Jupiter is well placed. Jupiter is Atmakaraka, by the way, highest degrees, and it's in the 10th house, sitting in the friendly sign Leo. Also being aspected by the Lagna Lord. Mars is looking at it from the 4th aspect. Becomes a strong Jupiter. So all these three planets are strong. Now we'll look at the second one. His Tithi Lord, he was born in Shashti. Tithi Lord is Venus, and Venus is, again, we saw Venus is very powerful, sitting in the 6th house in a Parivartan Yoga. Venus and Mars exchanging signs and making it a very, very strong, powerful position for Venus. So the 7th house Lord is the Tithi Lord. Let's look at the third technique now. Third technique, again, second house. So we will look at how this, now people must be wondering, okay, we see the Parivartan Yoga. We see so many planets in the 6th house. How is it working out for Mukesh Ambani? All right. So for that, we need to know a little bit about Neeta Ambani. Okay. So Neeta Ambani, his wife, she was initially a partner of Reliance Industries, and what I read, okay, so please check it up. She resigned from there, and what did she do? She owned a cricket team, IPL. I think it was Mumbai Indians. I'm not very sure. I've forgotten. I've stopped following cricket. I watch it whenever there's World Cup or something, but I don't religiously watch cricket. But she got into sports. Number one, sports is seen from the 6th house. Okay. I also think that Mukesh Ambani and Neeta Ambani have one of the best legal teams in India, right? Again, 6th house related. And Neeta Ambani, I believe, is the owner and of Reliance Foundation that is into charity. You see, Libra is the lord of the 12th house. It's sitting in the 6th house. Another Viparit Raj Yoga. 12th Lord in the 6th house. 8th Lord in the 6th house. You see the connections here. All right. And if we look at the concept, if we look at the 6th house from the 7th house, okay, it is 12th from itself. Okay. Becomes the house of charity and foreign lands. And Rahu, obviously, in the 12th house in Libra is giving, it's a multinational company. They have employees all over the world. Business in foreign lands. Libra, the sign of business, Rahu. The sign of foreigners and foreign lands. 12th house. It all fits in there, if you see. Right? Also, I believe this year, Neeta Ambani also had something to do with the Olympics. 6th house of sports. And the 12th house, the 6th and 12th axis. So if your spouse is involved in, if your 7th Lord goes to the 6th house, and this is how you channelize the energy, it can give you very, very positive results. Right? Also, if you see the Lord of the 5th, right, it's very interesting. Jupiter is looking at the 6th house. Right? The 5th house. Your past life's good deeds. Jupiter is the Lord of Pisces. It's sitting in the 10th house and looking at the moon, 5th aspect, and looking at all the 3 planets here, 9th aspect. giving its blessings, right? And also the fifth house is the house of children. I believe his younger son, the one who just got married, also looks after pets, elephants as pets, sixth house of pets. I'm sure they're into looking after lots of animals and pets. So all the sixth house related things have been looked after by this very, very successful and famous couple, Mukesh Ambani and Neeta Ambani. Right? Now let's quickly take a look at the D9. We will look at first thing we will look at the Lord of D9's first house. You see, it is Cancer. Moon is sitting in the first house. Powerful moon, strength of the moon. Lord of the seventh in D9, Saturn, sitting in Capricorn in its own house. Lord of seventh Lord in seventh house, first Lord in first house, long-term relationship. Saturn, the Karaka of long-term relationships, sitting right there. Very, very strong D9. Also the sign of business, Saturn, Capricorn. Tithi Lord, Venus, 12th house. Venus loves being in the 12th house. And it's sitting in with his friend Rahu. In a friendly sign, Gemini. Rahu and Venus both like being in Gemini. Both are friends with Mercury. Mercury is also well placed in the 5th house. So, coming back to the D1 chart, we will quickly look at the other aspects about how he's making so much money. We see this is a great example of Viparit Raj Yoga. 6th Lord and the 8th Lord going to the 8th Lord and the 11th Lord. Mercury going to the 6th house and getting exalted with Sun. Sun and Mercury are friends. Venus is also there. Venus is friends with Sun. Mercury is friends with Venus and with Sun. From there, all of these three planets are aspecting the 12th house. Lord of 12th house, Venus, again is another Viparit Raj Yoga. Jupiter looking at moon, expanding. Jupiter looking at its own house. Lord of second house looking at itself from the 10th house of career. Lord of the 9th house, moon going to the second house. How many Dhan Yogas? Look at that. How many Dhan Yogas? Very powerful Raj Yogas. Mars looking at, Lagna Lord looking at the moon 8th aspect. Saturn and Mars looking at each other. Saturn is looking at Jupiter 10th aspect. So these are some of the combination in Mukesh Ambani's charts that is giving him not just a long-term relationship with his wife, but also very, very successful business and business partnership with lots of people from the world and making him one of the richest men in the whole world. All right. So if you have any questions, feel free to post. If you're Scorpio Ascendant and you think you can be one of the richest people in the world, and if you have questions about your long-term relationships and marriages, I'm happy to answer your questions. If you want a consultation, feel free to get in touch with me with my information available right at the bottom of the screen. All right, let's look at the next chart. Let's look at Barack Obama's chart. Okay, so we are looking at a Capricorn Ascendant. So if you're a Capricorn Ascendant, pay attention. Maybe you have some of the same planetary placements. So we will go step by step. We will look at what was the first technique? We will look at the position of Moon, Venus, and Jupiter. Let's look at Moon. Moon in the 5th house and in the sign of Taurus. Moon exalted. Stability of mind. Shows this person has a stable mind. Moon is in Taurus and in the 5th house. 5th house is exalted. Your past life good karmas will all show up. Yeah, that's why he became the 44th president of the United States. One of the most powerful men in the world at his when he was president. Next, we will look at the placement of Venus. Where is Venus? Venus is in Gemini in the 6th house. This is not such a good placement for Venus because Venus does not do very well in the 6th house. However, the placement of the sign is very good. If we look at the nakshatra, it's in a setting in a friendly nakshatra of Aradhra, Rahu's nakshatra. And Rahu is sitting in the 8th house. So Venus placement is not all that great. Okay, let's look at Jupiter now. Jupiter. Now you'll say, oh, wow, Jupiter is debilitated. Well, we also have to look at Saturn. Jupiter and Saturn. Jupiter is sitting in Saturn's house, so the debilitation is cancelled here. And instead, it is forming a Raj Yoga called Neech Bhang Raj Yoga. Okay? So if even Narendra Modi has this in his chart with Mars and Moon. Interesting, right? Two very, very powerful people in the world have a Neech Bhang Raj Yoga in the 1st house. So the Jupiter becomes extremely strong here. Being in the 1st house, giving him all the knowledge and wisdom, and Saturn giving him, making him extremely hardworking, and also giving him the ability to connect with the common people, because Saturn is also the significator of the blue-collared people. All right. So it's a combination of your knowledge and principles and higher learning, Jupiter, and Saturn is your karma, your deeds, what you will do. So Saturn and Jupiter conjunct in any house, especially in the 1st or any of the Kendra and Trikona house, forms a very, very powerful Dharma Karma Adhipati Yoga. This is a very, very strong yoga. Okay. So Jupiter is extremely powerful, but let's see, the Jupiter is also aspecting Moon, 5th aspect. So the Moon becomes even more powerful. Okay, so we see that there is a lot of stability of mind, there is a lot of wisdom and knowledge here. Looking at the first technique. What's the second technique? Second technique is we'll look at the Tithi Lord. Guess what is the Tithi Lord? Tithi Lord is again Moon for him. He was born on Dashami, the 10th day of the moon, and the Lord is Moon. Moon is exalted in the 5th house. Very, very powerful Moon. So the second technique is also giving good results here. Now let's look at the third one. Now third one, we see Mercury and Sun in the 7th house. Now Sun and Sun could give some negative results here because Sun is not very strong in the 7th house. But you see the 9th Lord, which is Mercury, which is also in this case, for all Capricorn ascendants, Mercury becomes the significator of higher learning, knowledge, and principles. And Mercury, we also know, is the original Karaka, or the significator for communication, right? So, with this conjunction here of Mercury and Sun, and also, if we see the dispositor, it's happening in Cancer, and the dispositor is exalted. Again, Moon is playing a very, very strong role here. So even though the position of the Sun is not good, every couple has issues. So maybe they could have had some kind of issues, but with this placement, Mercury and Moon has solved all their issues with communication. Okay? So every individual, every couple will definitely know that no, it's not a bed of roses. There are ups and downs, and there are ego clashes and issues in communication. But the difference between a couple that lasts decades and a lifetime is that they're able to resolve their misunderstandings and resolve their problems with communication. Okay, so a good Mercury is also a good sign of a good long-lasting relationship. We can also see that Saturn and Jupiter is also giving the 7th aspect to the 7th house, sitting from the 1st house, which is also a very, very... Jupiter giving that aspect itself is a good sign there. Okay, so that is the third technique here. We've looked at, are there any aspects? I don't see any aspects apart from Saturn on the 7th house. There's a lot of action happening in the 7th house. Sun from the 7th house is also looking at Saturn and Jupiter and making him world famous as the president of the United States. Right? Now let's look at his D9 chart and see if the D9 is also supporting and showing strength or not. So opening up his D9, there you go. You see he's a Virgo ascendant in D9 and Mercury is exalted and sitting in the first house is exalted. This Lord of the first house sitting in the first house. Let's look at the 7th house. Lord of the 7th house, Pisces Lord Jupiter sitting in the 7th house. Makes it a very, very strong, very, very strong D9 chart. Okay. Tithi Lord becomes a little weak here in the 8th house. And then we see a conjunction of Venus, Mars and Sun. Venus, although in the 4th house, but it has certain conjunction which may make it a little weak here. We have to study that in a little more detail. But overall, looking at it, it looks like a very, very stable D9 because of Mercury being in the first house. Again, communication, first house brain, sitting in the first house. This itself is good enough to solve any kind of issues with the spouse and making it a very, very strong chart. Jupiter, 7th Lord in the 7th house, again making it very, very powerful. All right. So that's pretty much it. This is my analysis of long-term relationships and marriage for two very well-known people. So if you have any questions, feel free to comment. I'm always happy to answer your questions. I'm also very active on the comments. Thank you very much. If you like this video, please like and share this video so that it can help someone who's looking for answers on their relationships. Thank you very much for your time. Have a nice time. Bye-bye.